Good morning. Welcome to Stanching Tyranny Radio. Jim and Jeff Stanch here, hosts of the show every Saturday morning. We are so glad you could join us
Absolutely.
during this beautiful Saturday. And every Saturday is beautiful just because it's Saturday.
That's
What
true.
more reason do you need, really?
It is Saturday, yeah.
And I do want to take a minute and thank listeners who called in on
Yeah.
Wednesday to Harry's show,
Mhm.
Harry Hurley in the morning. On every morning here on WPG 1450 AM, and a lot of calls, a lot of
A lot of good
interesting calls, a lot of concern that we're hearing.
Rightly
and
so. Rightly
rightly
so.
so. We're rightly so. And we really we don't like the idea um, of alarming people, but there's a lot to be alarmed
There
about.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're not going to learn about it on Fox News, Fox Business,
No.
CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, ABC, CBS,
No.
you name it.
Well, the reason is that the people creating these problems own the media outlets.
Correct.
So that's a fact.
Yeah.
The media outlets are owned by the big banks, who are owned by the central banks, who are owned by a select few families of
Throughout
very,
the world.
yeah,
And
very
some
great
of the,
means.
some of the names you're familiar with, some of them you're not familiar with, of course, Rockefeller. And,
sure.
you know, maybe you're not
The
familiar
Morgans,
with
but even though the family names kind of
yeah.
went away, but there's still
Mhm.
Morgan family,
Right.
different names. They're still
Yeah.
out there, and they still control a lot.
Even Reynolds, Rothschilds, some people may be aware of, some people may not. Warburg,
Yep.
all these names, some known, some not, are the controllers of the world. And they do it through groups such as the Trilateral Commission,
The
Council on
CFR,
Foreign Relations, the CFR, the
Royal Institute of International Affairs.
Yeah, yeah, and they're all the little subgroups that get together and they have their pointy-headed discussions and decide what to do with you, the useless eater.
Yeah, yeah. They've had enormous power for a long time, and when I say a long time, I mean centuries.
Yeah,
Not just decades, centuries, going back centuries. I mean, it's crazy. It's probably goes back to the days of Jesus Christ when he overturned the money changers' tables in the temple.
yeah, yeah. So we're going to get into a little bit of economic news. Of course, we had the employment numbers yesterday. We'll get into that. And maybe if we can, maybe we can fit in some ideas, really some things that we'll talk about what we do.
Yeah, that while there seemed to be a common theme, one of concern and one of what do we do?
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. I hope we can be helpful with that because, yeah, we as Americans, we need to change.
We do.
We need to change what we've become accustomed to, and it may not sound comfortable or pleasant, but it needs to happen because if you do it now, you will be in control. If you choose not to do it, if you choose not to heed the warnings, then there will come a time where you're forced to make these changes, and it won't be pleasant. You won't be prepared.
Right.
That's the point. We want people to be prepared for what's coming.
Yeah.
Because it's not good.
Right.
But the main thing to understand is, well, let's just put it right out there. The Federal Reserve, our own government, they don't care about you.
No.
They do not care about the United States of America or its citizens.
Right.
This is a global plan to recover wealth from all nations, all people, and to implement a global currency and a global government ultimately. That's what they're after.
And understand it's not a new plan. It's
Right.
been a plan for centuries.
Yeah.
Here in America, it's been a plan for about 100 years, a little bit longer
Yeah.
than 100 years.
Yeah.
We have Woodrow Wilson, Colonel Edward Mandell House to thank for the current Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve System, by the way, that Woodrow Wilson himself expressed sorrow
Right.
for allowing
Regret.
to be regret
Yeah.
for allowing to be set up because he finally in his later years saw it for what it was.
Right. Right.
And so this plan goes back, and it all is about global control, new world order, global everything.
Yeah. Keep in mind, listeners, these people, the politicians, the Federal Reserve chairman, and the rest of them, they all want you to believe that they're just they're figuring this thing out, this whole economy thing, how it works. They want you to think that they're still figuring it out. They're still learning. Baloney.
The economy is dynamic.
It's
and
dynamic.
It's
Yeah, it
ever-changing.
evolves. Baloney.
Right.
They know exactly how it works. They know exactly what levers to push or pull or what dials to turn to create a reaction from you. And that's what they're there to do.
Yes.
That's exactly what they're there to do. We see it going on right now in the emerging markets and in this country. We see the MyRA thing. That is a huge red flag, listeners, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
And dare I say, we're going to see other things that are going to sweeten the pot more and more, things like Mincome, things like that.
Right.
And we have to be leery and be careful and watch for it. You know, I really, to understand what's going on, you really have to be put into the proper frame of mind. And I found an excellent article written by a fellow named Brandon Smith from a website called Activist Post. He wrote an article called "The Final Swindle of Private American Wealth Has Begun." And he makes a lot of great points, and he really succinctly puts the Federal Reserve controllers, what they do, into a couple paragraph synopsis to put the frame of mind in. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. I quote from Brandon Smith. "If you continue to believe that the Fed actually exists to help stabilize our economy or our currency, then you will never find the logic behind what they do. If you understand that the goal of the Fed and the globalists is to dismantle the dollar and the U.S. economic system to make way for something new, then certain recent events and policy initiatives do start to make sense."
Yeah, and that's why we say these market crashes, recessions, depressions, they're not accidental.
Yeah. Let me just continue finish this paragraph. If you view the progressive financial breakdown in America as some kind of comedy of errors or a trial of unlucky coincidences, then there is not much I can do to educate you on the reasons behind the carnage. If, however, you understand that there is a deliberate motivation behind American collapse, then what I have to say here will not fall on biased ears. And we'll cover some more of this article, but understand that what he's saying is we have to look at the big picture, the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is to have a one world currency, a one world government, and a one world religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
All enforced by the one world military.
Right. Right. And the economy, the financial collapse that we're seeing is a great way to do that, to get things started.
Yeah.
That'll usher in the one world currency. He goes on to say in this article that he believes that the taper, which has begun, the Fed tapering, which means they're not printing as much money as they had previously. They're trimming back their stimulus.
Right.
That's affecting the emerging markets. Why? Well, because the ones that get the stimulus money first
Are the central banks.
The central banks,
Yeah.
and they want to do something to create some sort of return. So in the past, that has been by putting that money into emerging markets because they see that as markets that are on the rise as consumerism takes hold in nations that where it hadn't been previously,
Right.
like China, like India, places like that.
Yeah.
When they taper, that stimulus goes away in these emerging markets, and then what happens? Well, you start to see crashes like we're seeing in foreign stock markets, and you start to see inflation. And because this money, the stimulus money, is there, it's got to
gotta go
get
somewhere.
spent. It's got to go somewhere. It creates a artificial demand, and what you end up with is these types of contractions that we're seeing all over Europe, now in Asia, all over the world.
Turkey is back in the news. They're having
Argentina.
some really big problems there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Portugal's having some difficulties. Who knows how they're gonna happen. Listeners may not know this. Even our own, they say our own, they're not a state, but they're a what do you call that, colony? I don't know. Puerto Rico is in some bad shape. Are you hearing
Philippines
about this?
also. Malaysia.
Are you hearing about this, listeners?
No, they're not.
No.
They're not, because they're insulated from it by a lamestream media that they follow their marching orders is what they do.
They would rather cover Justin Bieber drunk driving in the Super Bowl and what was the best commercial in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, what was the best
That
commercial.
is more important.
Yeah. But this is a tool. Keep in mind, it's a tool to bring about the IMF bailout, right, of multiple nations, and naturally there will be strings attached.
Right.
One could say that that's what will ultimately happen here. That's Brandon Smith's opinion, and I agree with him that if taper continues, which it will, it's being used to create an environment where we are begging for someone to do something.
Right.
And that someone will be globalist in nature, like the IMF, International Monetary Fund. Furthermore, it will be used as a tool to destroy national sovereignty.
Yeah.
We won't be Americans anymore.
They can't have America be a strong country.
Right.
Dare I say, listeners, they can't have you as an American be a strong individual.
No. You have to be knocked down a few pegs on the ladder there. You have to be beat up so that you will submit your will to the global plan.
Right.
And that's what's going on. They will destroy American sovereignty, American pride, and just at the right moment, when we're finally defeated and we're begging for someone to do something, well, they have the solution. They've had it for a long time. They've had it figured out.
Yeah.
They tried to do it before World War I, World War II. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
It didn't work because the time wasn't right. All these things happen in God's time, not in our time. But that doesn't mean they aren't going to try.
Right. So when you really think of it in this perspective, then you look at things like the breakdown of the family, the rampant drug and alcohol use, the poor job of the education system,
the abortion rate.
You add all these things up, and what has it done to us as Americans?
Has it made us
uplifted
stronger?
Us? No, of course
it hasn't. No.
Removing God from basically everything, as much as possible, as often as possible, has it made us better?
No.
You know, we'll be getting into things that we think, and should be done, things that we've done ourselves. And here's item number one, listeners. We got to get our spiritual houses in order.
Right.
We really do. We got to step back and think about, what's really important here?
Mm-hmm.
What's really important? Why am I focused on silly things?
Yeah.
Meaningless things.
Stupid stuff that is, it's junk. I mean,
why
really.
do I focus on pop culture?
Right.
Why do I care about what who Ellen's going to marry, gay marriage? Why do I care about 33 gay couples getting married at the Grammys? Why do I care about these things?
Yeah. Yeah, when you take a step back and think about it, and you think about, well, where will all these things be in eternity?
They'll be in the trash heap of time.
Right, exactly. And then it occurs to you, or it has to me anyway, this is a spiritual battle between good and evil. There's no
really
doubt
is.
about it. It's become very obvious.
Yeah.
This isn't about men. This is about powers that we can't possibly understand,
and what
that exist out there to take control and to enslave the people of the earth.
And really, doesn't it make perfect sense? If you're that power, that evil, dark power, right? What better way to guarantee the enslavement of humanity than to get them to think that there's no such thing as you in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Yeah.
It's true.
You look at the debate this week between Bill Nye the Science Guy and Ken Ham.
Yeah. We didn't watch it, by the way. Well, why? Well, we have limited access to these things, as we've talked about before. We didn't watch the Super Bowl. Why? Well, because we don't have that channel.
Right.
Which is fine. Which is by our own choice.
Well, what did we do instead? Well, we played some board games with the family.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It was fun.
We still had a Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah. Super Bowl popcorn's what I had.
Right,
that
right.
was good.
Yeah, Parmesan cheese on there.
You ever have popcorn with Parmesan cheese, listeners?
Yeah.
It's delicious. Go ahead and have it. Now, you got to put the Parmesan cheese on right after you empty it. And by the way, if you have a hot air popper, throw it in the garbage.
Put it in the garbage.
Please.
Yeah,
I'm talking.
And same with microwave popcorn.
Forget
We're
it.
talking old-fashioned, popped in the big old kettle
In some
on your
peanut
stove.
oil or some coconut oil.
Right.
You know?
And then you put your Parmesan cheese on there, and while the butter's still warm, and you put your butter on there. And give it,
yeah.
But anyway,
sorry.
that's what we did, and that's kind of giving you a little hint as to where we're going with how to deal with this. But let's talk about what's going on, and hopefully listeners now have maybe a different mindset, a different frame of mind as to how they should approach this.
Yeah. So we'll start. Unemployment, of course, is continuing to be a problem. Of course, the unemployment rate went down.
Yeah, it's down to a 5-year low of 6.6%.
But in reality, less jobs were created in January than were created in than were anticipated. I should say they anticipated 180,000 jobs created. Some actually anticipated more.
Right.
But the consensus was right around 180,000, came in at 116.
113.
Or 113, I'm sorry.
Well below the average monthly gain of last year was 194,000 per month.
Yeah.
And the year before that was 164,000 per month. So the idea is that we're going in the wrong direction here.
Yeah, the other thing is that there's often revisions of prior months.
Right.
December's results were downright atrocious at 74,000 jobs created. They did revise that up by 1,000 jobs to 75,000.
Yeah.
So the unemployment problem, I mean, what's the number? I don't remember it offhand, but there's a number at which jobs
Yeah.
creation has to be
Mhm.
in order to keep up with population
It's
growth.
over 200,000. I've heard varying numbers anywhere between 200,000 and 250,000
Mhm.
need to be created just to kind of keep things in balance.
Right.
And obviously we're well below that. But I have the AP release here.
Oh, that's
I
ought to
just
be
got to
good.
read a couple things. First of all, it's the headline. U.S. employers add 113,000 jobs. Rate dips to 6.6%.
Okay.
Yeah. The sluggish job growth could undermine hopes that economic growth will accelerate this year, but economists also say they expect hiring to return to healthier levels in coming months. Doesn't that sound familiar? Don't they say that every month?
Yeah.
That exact paragraph
Pretty much.
is in every month's press release of the new
The
employment
AP.
numbers.
Yeah.
Uh,
We roast on the AP. Why? Because most news outlets
Right.
will parrot what the AP
Yeah,
says.
yeah, exactly. Right. The government said that manufacturers, construction firms, and mining and drilling companies added a strong 76,000 jobs combined.
Wow.
Where do they get this strong
Yeah.
from?
Well, further, where do they get this construction worker from?
Yeah.
Because that is counterintuitive.
Right.
Matter of fact, how can you have such a increase in construction jobs when the weather all across the country has been atrocious?
Right. Yeah.
How do you have that?
Well, not only that, but you look at the home ownership rates
Yeah.
and things like that. It makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Where is the demand for construction?
Right.
It's not in retail.
That's for sure.
Am I right?
Yeah, not if
Not if you're paying attention and listening to Stanching Tyranny and you know that Sears and Kmart and J.C. Penney and Target and
Walmart.
Darden restaurants, even Walmart, are closing locations this year. Take it a step further. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, did you see the Super Bowl ad from Radio Shack?
It was really funny.
It was funny.
Yeah.
And they're trying to shed their image. Which, by the way, I've always liked Radio Shack for the gadgety types of things that you and I would find and need. Things like breadboards and solder guns.
Right.
And things like that
Yeah.
that you're just not going to find anywhere else.
No.
Now,
you're not.
Radio Shack has been having a problem with their image. Radio Shack really, I mean, remember that whole battery thing? Oh,
Yeah.
Radio Shack, you go there for batteries.
Right.
It was about the dumbest thing
That
I
was.
had ever heard.
Yeah. That was very short lived, but
Yeah.
it was. I don't know whose idea that was.
Right.
It was clearly a bad idea.
Yeah. But they apparently want to become more known for electronics, blah, blah, blah. Well, listen, guys, if you want to become Best Buy, I don't think that's the best strategy in the world.
No.
I think a smarter strategy would be to cater more toward the cutting edge of
the
technology.
make community.
The make community.
I
the-
like they are handling 3D printers. I think that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
Why don't they get it more into like Home Depot does with some classes
That's
in
what
their
they
stores?
should do. That would be smart.
Showing people what the heck they can do with a $1,500 3D printer.
Right.
Because once people understand what they can do,
They're
they're
going
going to want one. Why don't they do stuff like that? That's
Yeah.
what Home Depot does. They have the little classes about how to do this and that. And what happens? Well, of course,
You buy
people-
whatever that product is.
It might be a tool. It might be, it might be doing tile in your bathroom, and they show you how to set tile properly and all
Yeah.
that. And it creates sales. Well,
Right.
Radio Shack, hello, Radio Shack, are you listening?
Yeah.
We have the solution. Get started.
Yeah, you
And-
want to embrace the maker, nerdy, geeky community
Right.
and make it easier for those guys.
Heck,
Because-
there's maker clubs. They could have the maker club meetings at their stores.
Right. They sure could.
It could be like an outlet for the maker community. This is
Yeah.
where you come for your make stuff.
Yeah.
all the boards and the circuit boards and the processors and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But no, they're not listening to us.
No.
Instead,
They're listening to pop culture,
mhm,
the latest and greatest
Right.
thing on the Super Bowl.
yeah, and they're going to close 500
And
stores
they're going
this
to
year.
close 500 stores. Yeah. Which is a shame.
It is.
Which is a shame. I've always been fond of Radio Shack. They're closing 500 stores. They said back in, I think it was last year, that they had no intentions to reduce their footprint in the marketplace. Unfortunately, now they're going to reduce their footprint in the
Yeah,
marketplace.
absolutely. Can I read another, just from the AP article? Not
You
to
sure
get,
can.
about the unemployment rate. I just love this. I got to read this here. And more people began looking for work in January, a sign that they were optimistic about finding jobs.
It couldn't be a sign that they're broke and need money.
Many of these people found work, thereby reducing the unemployment rate to 6.6% from 6.7% in December. That's the lowest rate since October 2008.
That's hilarious.
No, people looking for work is not a sign of a healthy economy. It's not a sign that they are optimistic about finding jobs. In America today, it's a sign that their unemployment benefits ran out and they need to go back to work because they got bills to pay.
Yeah,
that's what it's a sign of.
Yeah, the unemployment
AP.
rate payments have stopped for the long-term unemployed. Of course, they're going to start looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it, a few weeks ago here on the show, and the idea that people are somehow now thinking that, boy, things are looking great, I'm going to go out and find me a job is absurd.
Yeah, yeah. The attitude of this article it contradicts itself. It says here the underlying trend in employment growth is still decidedly positive. And then further down in the article, it says here, let's see, on Monday, an industry survey referring to the manufacturing industry found that manufacturing grew far more slowly in January than in December. A measure of new orders in the report reached its lowest level in a year.
Yeah.
Equipment orders are down.
Right. How about the Baltic Dry Index?
How about the Baltic
Should we
Dry
even
Index?
talk about
it's
that?
down 50%. Can you talk about what the Baltic Dry Index is?
The Baltic Dry Index is an index that illustrates how much goods is floating around out there to be shipped.
Well, how much shipping capacity
Yeah.
compared to containers filled actually transporting goods.
Yeah. And it's down 50%, only over the past few weeks.
Right.
Not that it's down, 50% over a few years ago.
Yeah.
Over the past few weeks.
Right. So what does that mean? Well, it means that stuff isn't being bought. There's no demand, or at least demand is way down.
Yeah, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal this week. Unfortunately, I couldn't read it, saying that companies are having trouble with keeping their prices high enough.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're particularly the name brands.
Right.
They're having trouble with that.
I want to talk about that in a minute too in a New York Times article, but just continuing the contradictions in this AP article. Quote, the underlying trend in employment growth is still decidedly positive. See, now, I guess a lot of readers would just stop reading there. They wouldn't make it to the end of the article where it says about the new orders for manufactured goods reached its lowest level in a year, that automakers said sales slipped 3% in January, that signed contracts to buy homes fell sharply, according to the National Association of Realtors. Does this what I was just referring to, does that agree with the previous statement, the underlying trend in unemployment growth is still decidedly positive?
No.
Who are they trying to kid, the AP?
They're trying to kid America
Mm-hmm.
by feeding them false mumbo jumbo
Mm-hmm.
so that they will just hear it, read
Yeah.
it, move on,
Right.
go to work,
Mm-hmm.
do their thing,
Yeah.
vote on Tuesday,
Right.
all those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the shame of it is it's such an ingrained part of our lives to just accept what gets piped into our living rooms that it's very, very difficult to get people to pay attention to the truth.
Right.
Because it's a lot easier to accept what Dan Rather has to say. Is Dan Rather still on TV?
I think so. I was thinking
Or
Barbara Walters. Though,
Barbara
myself.
Walters.
That's what I was
Who's
thinking.
even on the evening
I
news
don't know,
now?
boy. We got 2 channels.
I know. I just thought I would ask.
Well, you're
I thought
asking
maybe
the wrong
you
guy.
knew. I don't know.
You're asking the wrong fella.
Isn't that one woman on the one channel? The woman with the blonde hair. What's her name?
Barbara Walters.
No, not her.
Well,
The
who
other
else?
woman.
I don't know who you're talking about.
The other woman. She's got kind of a deeper voice.
Stephanie Stahl?
No.
I don't know.
I can't think of her.
No.
It might come to me.
Okay.
It might come
Let's
to
hope.
me.
Maybe we should take a break. You can
Yeah.
think about this,
All right.
and we'll get back to it.
It's the
But
important things.
I do want to go over this New York Times article, if that's okay with you, unless
That's
you
fine
have
with me.
something more
No,
important.
we can do.
All
I
right.
already mentioned about Puerto Rico.
Yes.
We could get into that a little bit. Really, I don't have to get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay.
Things are bad in Puerto Rico.
Right.
Their bonds are getting downgraded.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Stanching Tyranny Radio. Jim and Jeff Stanch here, hosts of the show every Saturday morning on 1450 WPG Radio at 8 o'clock. Did you want to say something? Bull? You look like you want to say something.
I do. Yeah. Have we reminded listeners to join us on Facebook?
No, I don't think recently.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Please like our page. You'll find us on Facebook, Stanching Tyranny.
Yep.
Look us up.
Hit the
Go
like
ahead and like
button.
us
Yeah.
if you want. I mean, you don't have to.
Well,
This is.
We won't make
do
a law
still
about
have
that.
some freedoms here.
yeah.
But yeah, we'd love to see you join our little Facebook page.
Yeah,
there.
and by doing that, you'll see some. If we come across what we think is an important bit of news that our listeners should pay attention to, we will
Absolutely.
post it to our page.
Yeah, we do that a lot.
Yeah, and also, we have a Monday night show, or I should say Tuesday morning, because it's on at midnight.
Right.
Monday night going into Tuesday morning.
It's a 2-hour show.
2-hour show. If you like what you hear, you can tune in there. Sometimes we've been getting pretty good at it.
Mhm.
We post the show on our Facebook page, so
Right.
you don't have to listen at midnight. You can just refer to the Stanching Tyranny Facebook page, look for the archive listed there, and go ahead and give it a listen.
Yeah. So join us.
Yeah.
But we wanted to get back to the news of the week, the economic news, which we know our listeners care about, and that's why we want to talk about it. I came across this article this week in the New York Times. Says, headline, "The middle class is steadily eroding. Just ask the business world."
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to read a few excerpts
I
from
would
the
love
article.
it.
If you
I would love it. This is New York Times, listeners.
New York
This isn't-
Times. This
this
is in the
isn't-
business section of the
And-
New York Times.
And this, so I just want to point out, this isn't one of Jim and Jeff's crazy websites that they follow.
No, right.
It's
yeah.
the New York Times,
Right.
which could be considered mainstream.
Yeah. Quote, "In Manhattan, the upscale clothing retailer Barney's will replace the bankrupt discounter Loehmann's, whose Chelsea store closes in a few weeks. Across the country, Olive Garden and Red Lobster restaurants are struggling, while fine dining chains like Capitol Grill are thriving. And at General Electric, the increase in demand for high-end dishwashers and refrigerators dwarfs sales growth of mass market models." Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a quote here from John G. Maxwell, head of the Global Retail and Consumer Practice Division at PricewaterhouseCoopers. What are they, accountants?
Yeah.
PricewaterhouseCoopers?
Yeah, accountants, yeah.
Yeah, he says, quote, those consumers who have capital, like real estate and stocks, and are in the top 20% are feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? Yeah, in response to the upward shift in spending, PricewaterhouseCoopers clients, like big stores and restaurants, are chasing richer customers with a wider offering of high-end goods and services, or focusing on the rock-bottom prices to attract the expanding ranks of penny-pinching consumers. See, we're expanding, us penny pinchers.
Yeah.
The middle class is going away.
It is.
The lower class is expanding, and the upper class is feeling pretty good right now.
Right.
According to John G. Maxwell of PricewaterhouseCoopers. Isn't that wonderful?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why businesses would want to shift their focus. If you look at the statistics of the middle class, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Median household income in the United States has fallen for 5 years in a row. Median, that's middle
Yep.
class,
Sure.
right? Rate of home ownership has fallen for 8 years in a row. In 2008, 53% of all Americans considered themselves to be middle class. A recent survey found that now only 44% do.
Wow. So it is indeed shrinking, just like Mr.
Yeah.
Maxwell alluded to.
That's right. In 2008, 25% of all Americans in the 18 to 29-year-old age bracket considered themselves to be, quote, lower class. That has almost doubled in 2014 to 49% of Americans in the 18 to 29-year-old age bracket considering themselves to be, quote, lower class.
Wow. Well, some research was done by Barry Cinnamon.
Cinnamon?
Barry?
Like the spice?
Cinnamon. Spelled with a Y, though, not with an I.
So more like Cinnabon.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know why I said
don't know.
that.
But anyway, he works at the Federal Reserve. Yeah, St. Louis.
Doing the people's business?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so he did some research, and he found that in 2012, the top 5% of earners were responsible for 38% of domestic consumption.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, but did you know that back in 1995, that same crust,
The upper crust?
yes, the upper crust, was responsible for only 28% of consumption.
Interesting.
Yeah. Even more striking, the current recovery has been driven almost entirely by that upper crust.
Yeah, well, another statistic here, middle wage jobs accounted for 60% of the jobs lost during the 2008 recession.
Yeah. Well,
and have accounted for only 22% of the jobs created since then.
well, that coincides with this number I'm looking at here. Since 2009, inflation-adjusted spending by this top crust has risen 17%. You know how much the lower 95%, if they're the crust, what would the other part be?
The soft, squishy middle.
Yeah, the soft, squishy middle.
Yeah.
That's us. That's us.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that bottom 95%, 1% increase in
1%.
consumption.
Wow.
1% increase in spending
Yeah.
compared to 17% increase in spending by the upper crust.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. About 90% of the overall increase in inflation-adjusted consumption between 2009 and 2012 was generated by the top 20% of households in terms of income.
You know, really, we really need to, again, get away from the mainstream news media. Stop being fed these headline reports on unemployment, on how the economy is doing,
Mm-hmm.
and ask the people that we know, ask our acquaintances,
How are you doing?
yeah, how are you doing? How do you think the
Yeah.
economy is? This statistic is quite alarming. That is, only 19% of all Americans today believe that the job market is better than it was a year ago.
Wow.
19%.
Hmm.
Now, who is lying to us, listeners?
Your
Who
fellow
who is
American? Are
who
they lying?
is Barack Obama lying to us? Is Ben Bernanke lying to us, or Janet Yellen these
Whoever.
days?
Yeah.
Is Stephanie Stahl? I never did think of her name. The lady on the news.
Yeah, I know.
Well, whatever her name is, lady anchor of the news, is she lying to us? Is the AP lying to us?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they are not lying to us, that means your neighbor, your friend, your acquaintance, the
Your-
people that you work with, the
your
people that you
loved ones.
trust, they're lying when they say that the job market is worse.
Right.
So who's the liar?
Yeah, who are you going to believe?
We say believe your friends and neighbors.
Mhm. Yeah.
Stop believing these pointy heads that tell you what you need to hear in order to get you to do their bidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, analyst from Goldman Sachs threw Atlantic City a bone.
Yeah?
There wasn't any meat on it, though.
Well, of course not.
I'll read it. That's from the New York Times article. For example, luxury gambling properties like Wynn and the Venetian in Las Vegas are booming,
Yeah.
drawing in more high rollers than regional casinos in Atlantic City, which
Oops.
attract a less affluent clientele.
Right. Well, I mean, that's no
That
secret
is true.
in the listening
Yeah.
area.
Mhm. Yeah.
A lot of people work for the casinos, maybe
Mhm.
that's listening. How does it feel
Mm-hmm.
there, listeners? Does it feel like it did 10 years ago? My bet is that it does not.
Yeah. Well, so these analysts are encouraging companies to plan accordingly because the middle class is going away.
Yeah.
The Four Seasons Hotel and the St. Regis enjoyed 7.5% growth last year,
Yep.
compared to 4% in middle scale properties like Best Western.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to maintain strong economic growth with such a large proportion of the population falling behind, said Mr. Fazzari of Goldman Sachs. Let's see. Affluent shoppers like Mitchell Goldberg, an independent investment manager in Dix Hills, New York, say that the rising stock market has encouraged people to open their wallets and purses more. He said, quote, "Opulence isn't back, but we're spending a little more comfortably," Mr. Goldberg said. He recently replaced his old Nike golf clubs with Callaway drivers and Adams irons and bought a Samsung tablet for work and traded in his minivan for a sport utility vehicle. Well, congratulations, Mr. Goldberg. Wow, you're doing great. I'm glad to hear it.
Aren't you glad?
Yeah. And while the super rich garner much of the attention, most companies are building their business strategies around a broader slice of more affluent customers. GE, for example, says its fastest growing brand is the Cafe line of appliances, which is aimed at the top tier of the market, with refrigerators typically retailing for anywhere from $1,700 to $3,000 for a refrigerator.
You know what line of refrigerator I really like? I gotta say this. I gotta be completely honest.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The refrigerator line that I'm really excited about.
Icebox?
No, the Craigslist line of refrigerators.
Ah, well, yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so this fella from GE goes on to say, this is a person who's willing to pay for features like a double oven range or a refrigerator with hot water.
Because when I think I need hot water, I immediately go to my refrigerator.
Sure.
That makes sense.
That's according to Brian McWaters, a general manager with GE's appliance division. And this goes on to say about contrasting Sears and J.C. Penney, retailers whose wares are aimed squarely at middle-class Americans, are both in dire straits. Last month, Sears said it would shutter its flagship store in downtown Chicago.
Wow.
Its flagship store.
Yeah, I mean Sears is Chicago, right?
Right.
Sears Tower, hello.
Yeah.
Right?
J.C. Penney announced the closing of 33 stores and 2,000 layoffs. Loehmann's in New York City, where what I mentioned before, generations of middle-class shoppers hunted for marked-down designer labels at Loehmann's in the famed back room, which is now being liquidated after 3 trips to bankruptcy court since the year 1999. Meantime, Barney's, which is a luxury store, is moving to a more luxurious spot on Madison Avenue.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's terrific.
Darden
Terrific
Restaurants calls itself the world's largest full-service restaurant owner, while foot traffic at the mid-tier casual dining properties like Red Lobster and Olive Garden has dropped every quarter except one.
Wow.
Since 2005.
That is insane.
John Glass, a restaurant industry analyst at Morgan Stanley, said, quote, with diners paying an average tab of $16.50 a person at Olive Garden, the customers are middle class. They're not rich. They're not poor. With income growth stagnant and prices for necessities like healthcare and education on the rise, they are cutting back. On the other hand, at the Capitol Grill, an upscale Darden chain, the average check per person is $71.
Wow.
And spending is up there by 5% a year for the last 3 years.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if that is a great article for an example of what's going on here in the US of A. And the question is, do we have faith in our overlords to make it better? Well, in order to have such a faith, we have to believe that that's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to believe that they have our best interests at heart.
Do you believe that, listeners? Knowing what we've talked about for this past hour, hearing some of those statistics, hearing what's going on out there,
and reflecting on your own situation.
Do you have that confidence? Dare I say, no flip of the lever in November is going to solve this problem.
No.
No presidential election in 2016 is going to solve it either. We need to focus on ourselves like we used to here in America. Listeners, there used to be a time where politicians did not do anything that would be against the better interests of their constituents. Not for fear of getting voted out.
No.
But for fear of being tarred and feathered, for fear of being run out on a rail. They were all very real punishments for those politicians who took away the rights of their individuals.
Yeah.
Now we can't do anything without government permission. Anything.
Yeah. That's
You
right.
can't do whatever you want in your own home. You can't do whatever you want on your own property.
They've militarized the police.
You can't protect yourself. You can't go out and get a job, a work contract for whatever you decide it's worth.
Whatever you decide has value, whether it be Federal Reserve notes or chicken eggs.
You can't do that.
No.
So really, do we really think at this time in our history that we can count on these elitists, these politicians, these pointy heads to make things better for us? Dare we say here on Stanching Tyranny, the answer is no. But we have some ideas of things that you can do.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that when we get back.
Yeah, let's take a break. We will be right back.
Thanks for listening to Stanching Tyranny Radio. Jim and Jeff Stanch here. We're back, and we're glad you could be here. Glad you could listen. Our hour is almost up. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I can't believe
it's
it.
It's hard to believe.
And we promised to get into a bit of what we have done and what we recommend listeners to do
and
to prepare and protect their families.
And this isn't going to be a commercial, listeners. This isn't going to be a commercial about going solar or getting that home performance with Energy Star done, all of which is a very valid thing you could do.
Absolutely. It's good advice.
Matter of fact, I will throw the phone number out there, 888-669-7337. If you want to call our office, talk to the people in our office about the money-saving solutions we have out there. They're real solutions.
Those are great
that will
ways.
Save you real money.
Great ways to get your expenses under control.
But we're talking about a bigger picture here than a blatant advertisement for our livelihood. And that is, really, we need to, as Americans, get back to what it means to be an American.
Right. And that means being a rugged individualist. It means getting our spiritual house in order. Like it or not, we were founded by Puritans, Quakers, people who had strong faith in the Almighty God and were blessed with creating this nation and creating what we've come to take for granted, to be honest.
Yeah.
And we've turned away from that kind of spirituality. We've turned away from depending on God for our blessings, and we've turned toward men to grant us blessings which we're born with if we choose to recognize that.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. Let's get our spiritual house in order. Let's do that first and foremost. Second thing is, let's reduce the influence of pop culture on our lives. The best way to do that is get rid of television. Am I saying you can't have a television at all in your home? No. I'll tell you what we did. We just have over-the-air channels. That's all we have.
Yep.
That's all we have.
We only got 2 channels.
Yeah.
That's it.
And we do have Netflix. If we want to watch a certain show, we can do it on our terms.
Right. Without commercials.
Right. Without interference of things being broadcast into our home that maybe we don't want our children to be exposed to and have to explain it to them.
Right.
All those things. Those things don't happen by mistake.
And the other thing we found is the TV isn't on all the time.
Right.
The TV is only on when we actually want to watch something specific.
And there's a benefit to that.
The
benefit is you will find yourself, when there's nothing to watch on TV, you will open a newspaper. You'll open a book. You'll maybe download a free ebook on Google Play or Amazon or Kindle or whatever. Right? There's a lot of resources available out there. The other thing is, please do not have televisions in your children's bedrooms.
Right. There's a reason they call it programming, listeners. Need I say more?
No.
Yeah.
They will get that programming from the television. If you leave your television on all the time, guess what will happen in that bedroom? The TV will be on all the time. And the programming will continue.
Right.
It's not healthy. You can use that time.
Yeah. One more thing about the television. I hope people understand where this is coming from. It's coming from the fact that the same people, the same entities that control our destiny, our financial destiny, and want to implement a world government and a world currency and a world religion, they control the programming, do they not?
They sure do.
They do. And it's done in a way that will soften the the impact of things that were social taboos in the past,
Yeah.
and maybe that we wouldn't allow to enter our homes,
Right.
becomes mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a gradual thing. It
Mm-hmm.
happens in very small incremental steps, all to make sure that it flies under the radar screen.
Right.
All the while, it influences you and your decisions and your thoughts, whether you admit to it or not.
Yeah. Next thing, please pay down your debt. There's this disturbing statistic that I read from Activist Post that credit card debt since 2009 is up like 22%.
Yeah.
That's troubling.
Yeah.
We as Americans, we need to get rid of our credit cards. We need to pay off our debts. We need to get rid of monthly costs like cable bills that are really, they're not necessary. We don't
Right.
need that cost in our home.
Yeah.
It doesn't do us any good anyway.
Keep the internet. Read what news you like. Get a
Right.
subscription to whatever newspapers maybe that you like, and leave it at that.
Yeah. So pay off your debt. Start using that money that you have accumulated or are now able to accumulate to try and buy some tangible assets, things like silver coins, gold coins. Heck, buy some land somewhere. Buy some animals.
Yeah.
Chickens are a great place to start.
Yeah.
Learn how to raise your own food, grow your own food, learn new skills. You'll have time to learn about this stuff if you have the darn TV and cable out of your house and out of your life.
Yep.
It's important to learn how to do these things because when things go bad and they're headed in that direction,